Well, I've got an absolute mess, but I wanted to hop on here and make a quick little video, show you a little bit about what we got going on with Hawkeye. So if you caught the last video, you know that I put this big tenshock motor in here. We decided to swap the tenshock cooling jacket for the TFL cooling jacket. This one's a little bit bigger, and the the nipples are in reverse, so it's more applicable to this setup here. Now we also put the XLX2 Hydra in here to handle this big thing. I believe this is a 4090, and it's a 1750 kV. So I'm kind of worried about the weight of it, being that it's on this little aluminum plate, and the only thing kind of holding that on is the body of the unit. So I opted, based on the comments of the last video, to do a carbon fiber inlay. So if you see here, this is my carbon fiber inlay. That's how it ended up being. I ended up kind of cutting the wood channels down quite a bit, but I left just a little bit in there for some sort of rigidity, overall strength, you know, against the bottom. And then I kind of rounded the edges here, and then I just kind of conformed it, you know, with the carbon fiber. And the idea was I was going to have a little bit of gap because of the whatever you want to call this, Velcro or ultra Velcro, whatever. So that's ended up what I ended up doing. So we got the 90-degree fittings in from Offshore Electric right there on the Hydra. So we're going to be working on the cooling. And what I've got here, I'm going to do something like this, similar to where I don't have to run a super duper long one of these. The idea is, if you caught the older video of the original ESC I ran in this thing, it was mounted right here on the hull. So I had these channels cut for the wires of the ESC, and then this was going to be my cooling tube channel. So if we run this aluminum pipe like I originally planned, we have to bend the pipe to make it to where it can go in this hole up here, and it'll journey up here and it'll stop somewhere up here, and then I can transition it back to the flexible cooling tube, and then I'll have a nice rigid pipe. I thought about putting it like this, but the problem with that is it kind of takes away from the area I need for the power cables, because the power cables end up kind of laying under there, and that's going to take up that space. So I'm going to run it low through that hole there, and I got to bend this with the tubing bender to go through this hole, a nice little up bend to where then I can go through that hole, and it'll end up here near the XLX2, and then we'll pop on another cooling tube. So that's what my plan is, folks. But another thing I've been working on, I'm going to make another video on this. That's what will come out next, and we're going to disassemble this whole unit and get it all cleaned up. What I'm working on now, off camera, is the little motor, little 4-cylinder. The reason why I took it apart, I had a leaky head gasket, believe it or not. So what I ended up doing, I pulled all these sleeves out, and I put sleeve retaining compound on it, which is basically Loctite penetrating, and I pushed all the sleeves back in there, so we shouldn't have any sleeve movement, because these sleeves do come out of the aluminum block. And then there was a tiny little like gap around each of the sleeves. You can kind of see that gap right there, right? So I took gray Permatex and a really fine tip right here, and I squeezed it down in that. So what I'm letting it do now, I'm letting it dry, and then I'm going to go back across it with a razor blade and clean it all off. And then we're going to use this gasket here, spray it with some copper spray gasket, lay it back on it, and then try again. So I think y'all never saw the video of it running, but that'll come out in a future video. But I had it running. It would it would run on the plate. It wouldn't rev very high. And it just kind of sounded like it was choking on its own spit. And I felt like at that point, based on the water circulating through the cooling system, I was getting fuel in with the water. So I knew at that point unburnt fuel was leaking out of the combustion chamber into the cooling jacket and then out of the out port. So I knew I had a head gasket leak. And then once I took it apart, I could see there was a little like burnt spot right here where it was letting out some of the exhaust. So just another project. Just another project. But right now I'm looking for my damn tubing bender and I don't see it. Now that was slightly frustrating, but it ended up turning out pretty cool. So I've got it about an inch and a quarter pushed up on that with that extra little piece to clamp it on there. I've got the end flared out. You follow it all the way up. Goes through the hole. Okay. Makes the nice little curve up. Curve and goes through the hole. Go there, and we jump to the other cooling tube. It goes all the way up, and it goes into the Hydra. So, very cool. I kind of like these hard lines in the long runs. I feel like you get better flow out of it, you know? It's not running through flimsy rubber hose so far. And this is actually a bigger diameter than the other tube that I ended up using over there on the Cheetah. The Cheetah I used like 5/32 or something like that, which was the same inside diameter as the tube, and this stuff is 3/16. So slightly larger, slightly larger. But you know, aluminum tubing is like cheap. It's almost, I don't know if it's cheaper to buy that than it is to buy, you know, 6 foot of the flexible line. Just depends on where you get it from. This came from Oxidine Marine, because they're the only ones that sold this color and these colored accents. So okay, so now what I've got to do, we've got water in covered. Now we have to focus on water out. So it's got to come out of the Hydra here. Go ahead and pull that off. That's one thing I don't like how rigid these wires are, but they are really, really tough. So we've got to get this on that. That's going to fill the motor from the bottom, and then it's going to exit from the top here, and then that will run that direction. So we got to figure out how much we want to cut. Looks like we're going to cut it right there on the R for Marine. Okay, found my tubing bender. Cut it right there. Okay. And we got our little piece here. We're gonna have to cut us a little ring. All right, we look. Got it all on, got my ring on, that's good. Bingo was his name-o. Got it all on, boom, bam. Oh, chow, yeah. All right. Now I'm getting excited, folks. Now I'm getting excited. One thing that I'm a little frustrated with is I'm not 100% sure that my cowl that I created is gonna work. And here's what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and push these 8mm bullets back on. Okay, we're gonna tuck our wire in. Sometimes that's the frustrating thing with solder, is that the resin, in order to get it hot enough and get the resin or get the solder to stick to it, the resin ends up going up the wire, and it makes the wire so rigid, like an inch up. That's slightly frustrating. But here's what I mean. So let's go ahead and pull the cowl. I had messed with this earlier and I actually broke a glue joint on it, so I had to super glue it back together. Let's just take this off for right now. So here's my dilemma, right? So I've got my Velcro in there, and this is a 5300 SRD pack. We're just gonna set this in there. Okay. I have one little piece of Velcro on the bottom of the battery, just to add that height. Now let's look at this from this perspective, right? It is that close. That's how close it is to the top. See how it's kind of bulging out the top right there? It's a little frustrating. Just ever so slightly. And guess what? I didn't make room for it. Figured that the battery was going to fit. So I've got plenty of room in the front for the motor. Put that on. Make sure my cooling jackets and everything. Okay, I'll pop that on. Alright, that's good. And that's the dilemma. So it sits up that little bit. Kind of frustrating, huh? So I may have to go through the process of making yet again another cowl. Now if I take this off, this is the only piece I have on there. If I take that off, I'll put it back in there. That sits exactly dead nuts level with that piece. So it's kind of frustrating. Subtly frustrating. And I have checked multiple batteries. Go ahead, just bend that down like so. Tuck that in there. Now let's try and fit the cowl back on. Where's it hitting? I think it's hitting that damn wire right there. I think what I need to do is go in. If you can see right here, I've been sanding on that. I need to sand it some more, take some of that lip away. Okay. But now, if we look at it, it's flush, but there's nothing holding the battery in place. So slightly frustrating. Small boats and big batteries. What you gonna do? Now if we come over here and look, I bought these bashing batteries because I thought, you know, I said, okay, one's 47 mil and the other one's 51. And if you look at it, the bashing battery on the right is just a hair less. Just a hair. And the rest of it would work, but by the time you add the Velcro to it, I still think we're in the same boat. No pun intended. See, this one actually fits underneath the lip ever so slightly, but once we add the thickness of the Velcro, which is that right there, it's going to bring it up. So, kind of frustrating. I do know that the roaring tops will work. So these small 4400s will work with the Velcro. So, I think I may just have to run those. Which kind of stinks. A little frustrating. But, you know, but with a capital B. All I have to do is build another cowl and take into account the battery and then go from there. Because if I don't have a battery in there, I can make a new cowl slightly different than this one, and then we can go from there. And I could paint it and have a better paint job on it, because this one, all due to the cold weather made that weird effect. Call that the leopard print effect. But it only happened in the area, and part of me feels like it has some sort of chemical reaction to the glue, because I glued this flat portion to this flat portion, and it didn't do it anywhere else but right in this area. And I had sanded this down 3 different times and clear coated it 3 different times because I was fighting that issue. Third time it happened, I said, screw it. I'm leaving it there. So, oh well. Oh well. So yeah, I think we're pretty well good to go. We're good for another first maiden run, you know, with the tenshock motor. The only thing I really got to do at this point is I'm going to hook up the B-link and I'm going to go through, adjust the timing. Tenshock says 8 to 10 degrees. I've had failure in the past running these motors on 10 degrees, so I'm thinking about running it on 0, to be completely honest. I think that's going to be my safest bet. Now, these are 40 millimeter cans, high, you know, heavy duty motor. So hopefully we don't have the same issue with this motor as I had with my last two. Apparently I'm the only one having that issue, but I don't think I am. I read somewhere in a Facebook comment, people were talking about they need to do more R&D on them, and other people were having failures and yada, yada, yada. So I don't think I'm the only one in that boat. I'm just the only one publicizing it and showing, you know, my failures. But every time one blows up, hell, that's $300, you know. But yeah, so just wanted to give y'all a little bit of content and show you the dilemma I'm working with here. So we can run the boat. We just can't run it with the boss hoss of a battery. We can run it on some 70C 6S's, or we can run it on some 150C 4S packs. But I really think this boat's going to come alive on 6S. But just for testing purposes, at first we'll run it on 3 or 4S, and then we'll go to run it on 6S. But other than that, that's all I got for y'all tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see y'all later.